So, Ray, we are very pleased to have you as the founder of the STEP Conference, and then also as the founder of two different news media companies, StepFeed and YalaFeed. We've been wanting to have a technology conference founder who's local to the region, I mean a Dubai-based technology conference founder, for some time. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Good to be here.
So to start off, we'd like to ask you about your background, how did you come to Dubai? What's your educational background? What got you interested in technology?
So it goes back like 5 years ago. So I was at AUB. So I think there's a relation here with AD as well. So I was studying economics at AUB. I always had this interest in tech when I was there. So I was following a lot of watching Bloomberg, looking up certain things. I mean, I think at the time there wasn't also as much exposure to the tech scene as it is now. I wish there was. I probably could have had even maybe bigger opportunities. For example, one of the things that got me interested, if you know a company called Zappos. So I was super interested in that company, even when I was studying, even ordered emailed the founder to get a book. They had a culture book at the company.
What's the name of the founder again?
Tony Hsieh.
Tony Hsieh, very famous.
Yeah, it's a great book as well. So they had a culture book, and then they actually sent it to. So I was had an interest in that, watching different shows. But I wouldn't say there was much exposure at the time within the tech scene in general to go.
In Beirut, you're saying?
In Beirut or even in the region. I think the ecosystem wasn't yet fully built.
Right.
That's in 2009, 2010.
Right.
Not until the last 3 years, I started having a lot of noise happening, like ecosystem talk, startups, venture capital, etc. This was at the time, I think there was one main event that happened, Celebration of Entrepreneurship by WAMDA. I don't know if you
I've not heard of it, but I know WAMDA is a VC fund.
Yes, VC fund and a platform.
I didn't know they were doing stuff as far back as 2009.
They did that first one. It was a huge event in Dubai. That was the very start of things happening. Anyways, fast forward. When I was at the AUB, I started, the conference kind of started with small workshops that were done in art galleries in Beirut until, moving to Dubai and then, taking it more to the next level kind of thing.
And so when you came to Dubai, you thought to yourself, boy, this city needs a proper technology conference.
Yeah, exactly. So also not just a technology conference. I say you have GITEX, you have other events that happen, but you need a very community-based, experience-driven conference.
That's yeah.
So that was really missing, and this ties up to the whole thing about starting and doing workshops and art galleries. So from day one we started with the experience. Then we did the first few conferences in also very unique spaces. So we started in El Serkal Avenue as well. So we're doing 2 years in El Serkal Avenue before we moved to the new venue, which is.
So let's talk about that, the history of the STEP conference, because it started off, you had 300 people in the first year.
Yeah.
In 2013 is the first year of the conference.
2013, yeah. We even had a year before that, in Make Business Hub, which was the first co-working space, 100 people event. And then we did 300 and then 800 the year after it.
And so you've doubled or tripled in size.
Yeah. So until we had 4,000 people this last year. So kind of from 100 to 4,000.
And it takes place in April, right?
April, yes. April,
okay, so the next one is April 2017.
Yes.
Do you expect to triple in size again?
Yeah, probably. So the interesting thing about the coming year is that with the conference we'll probably have 6,000, 7,000 attendees. But what we're doing is we're launching something called, this is the first time actually, we're launching something called Step Music, and Step Music is going to be Step Music Festival. It's going to be a mix of a conference and a festival that's music focuses on up and coming artists, etc. from the region, but it also has a massive linkage from with tech, right? So you were telling me you had on the podcast Rami from Anghami. So Anghami is a digital music platform.
Right, exactly.
There's massive linkage between music, digital tech, and just the music scene. I mean, they need a platform as well, right? And we're in the right place to make that happen.
So let me ask you, like, in terms of the nuts and bolts of actually building a conference, because I've gone to a lot of conferences.
Yeah.
I used to run a company called Game Zombie. We covered gaming conferences.
Yes, yeah.
And I've been to a lot of technology conferences. But my perspective is that building a conference is a lot of work.
Yeah, it is.
And it's not easy either. And so
not.
you've had success, and it's expanding at this sort of exponential rate. So what have been some of the challenges, and how do you do that?
Yeah, it's been done. I mean, we've also learned many things the hard way. I mean, but it's on the long term, it ends up being good, because from day one, we were running, like, I think actually the first conference that we did, the 100 people one, it was just me and a student from AUD, actually, was someone was here, and a friend, you know, just like volunteering. It's just like to put on an event with that many people is quite challenging, right? And then even the years after, like, I think like not until like last year started having a more established, like, proper team in place. But like if you look at like 2 years ago, we had 2,500 people. It's still quite a big conference. Yeah. And it was the whole thing, like, we were just like 4 or 5 people kind of like putting the whole thing on.
You must be
and
working nonstop.
Yeah, and you have different people doing different things, and it's a massive load, right? And we've had, you know, times where, you know, we were very close to disasters, and then very borderline. But this is the event. I think what we did as well is brought something unique to the event space by really like thinking of small details that can make the experience.
That's what I want to ask you about. Like, what differentiates what makes a conference a great conference? Because we've all been to conferences that are boring, right?
Yes, that's the big thing, right? So it's 2 things. It's community and experience. Essentially, community that creates experience, right? So we were able to establish by starting small and doing very high engaging stuff with audience, like people that we refer to as super fans, you know, those people like love what we do, love the brand, and they were the ones that helped us, you know, grow as well in size. And that's the unique thing. And in Dubai, essentially one of the problems that you have with a lot of other events is that most people that go to those events are kind of like either free, like invited, or paid for by their companies. And this has like a lot of like consequences one way or the other, because when people go to a conference that's been paid for, they don't see the value as much as if they paid for it with their own money.
That's for sure.
And that's something that's missing in the region here. Like, people don't value, and I don't blame them, because there isn't many good conferences. Like, probably some have tried to pay, and then they go to an event and figure out that they get very disappointed. They don't want to go to any conference ever again, you know, unless it's free. We are trying to change that, and we change that in many ways. So we have about 50-60% of people who buy their own tickets,
so that's a good
which is a large number, you know. So those who go online, they take out their credit card, they buy, because they believe that's going to be, and we've proven that, you know, it's a great experience. Not only like you get substance, you get educated, all that, but you also have fun. Like we have, you know, parties every night, you know, like entertainment.
How much is the conference?
So that's another thing. We've kept it as well, not too affordable. So not too cheap, like to just anyone to come, but affordable. So we can. There's different packages, but it ranges from $150 up to $300, $400. It depends on the times. Yeah,
that's not bad at all.
Yeah. So
I've
even
seen conferences with crazy.
Of course,
prices.
yeah, exactly. It's like South by Southwest, for example, is a global is $1,000 to go to. You know, so
I've
that's
seen
like,
even more than that.
Yeah, that's like 10 times more.
Yeah.
So startups, for example, that's where the biggest opportunity comes in. So we've had about 200, 300 startups exhibiting. Those startups had like kind of like small mini booth to showcase over the 2 days. What we've done with them is that they just like, they don't pay for the stand. If they're selected, they get the stand for free. They only pay for their ticket, which is the cheapest kind of ticket there is in the event, and they get the space for free if they're selected. And the selection part is extremely important, because you don't want to end up with just any startup. You want to have
the quality stuff.
It's a bit of the like, if you get bad startups, bad VCs won't, good VCs won't come. Then if there's no VCs, then the good startups won't. So you need to have both. You need to maintain.
Totally. You have to run quality control, basically.
Exactly, which is not there in other conferences.
Yeah, right. So so on that theme, let's talk about some of the the most interesting speakers you've had, maybe in recent years in 2016?
Yeah.
What were some of the best talks and best speakers that you've
Yeah.
heard?
So I mean, over the last few years, I think like if you divide them into like some local and global. So on the local scene, like last year, a great session was with Fadi Ghandour and Arif Negbi from abroad. So it was I think it's running in the video on the screen. so that was quite interesting because they are kind of like the founders of the ecosystem in the region, and they've moved the ecosystem from where it was before to where
So
it
they
is
have the
today.
long perspective, in other words.
For sure, yeah. So that was really interesting. A great speaker we had last year, which is a bit more, it's actually very related to digital. Bassem Youssef, the Jon Stewart of the
And
Egyptian.
our guest, yeah, Basma
Of
was
course,
just talking
yeah.
about him before.
Yeah,
the
so
show.
Bassem was fantastic, and I mean, I don't want to leave anyone out, but like we had like bunch of other like also like very influential people in the region, like Sultan Qasimi, like Ahmed Shahabuddin, Diya Takuri, others that came. On a more global level, like we've had Dave McClure from 500 Startups, Mike Butcher from TechCrunch, Jeremiah Ouyang, who's one of the biggest minds in terms of the sharing economy.
I saw you had Patrick, the founder of the Next.
The Next Web as well as
conference.
Patrick. So I had several.
You had the guy who did. You had the guy
Trying to
who.
remember.
You had the guy who run. Well, your YouTube channel is great. So I was looking
Yes,
at
it
YouTube.
has like all the talks, all of that are there.
Yeah, and I saw the YouTube is a great resource because you've got like the whole talk on.
Yes, yeah.
You had the guy who did the analytics for the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah, Daniel. Yeah, that was. So we try to get a lot of these like a bit like unique kind of, that also makes it different as an event because you don't want to see the same faces. There are some important same faces to be there, but you also want to mix it up. So we had Daniel from Golden State Warriors. They had just won the NBA title.
Yeah.
We had a guy, his name is Disaster. He's like a rapper, battle rapper in LA. Who's originally from the region, so he's originally like born here and then went to LA, and he's one of he works with Drake, with big artists as well. So I kind of like mix it up as well in terms of like sports, entertainment, music, film, other things. We had Buthaina, for example, who does like Cinema Ail, which is a local Emirati. He does a great stuff with short film and short documentaries. So a lot of those interesting things, I think, when they come together with tech, it creates a good mix.
So how do you go about choosing the speakers, to choosing which speaker will be relevant the most to the region?
That's a good question. I think it's a mix of things. So you have some very important local issues and influential local, entrepreneurs, venture capitalists, just influencers in general that can be part of a great discussion. It's also the format and who you put together, so that matters as well. So it's as much as it's about who we get, it's also about like who they're with on stage, what they're talking about.
The interaction.
The interaction. So to give you an example of that, we had last year we hosted a debate. So usually at conference you have like panel discussions and talks.
Is that VCs versus entrepreneurs?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we had VCs versus and this is sparks a lot of controversy in many cases.
And it's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube, and it's the top, like some of the best entrepreneurs in the region with some of the best speakers. So we had Mudassir, founder of Kareem. We had Lulu from Nebbish and founder Fetcher as well. And then we had top VCs as well, Khalid from Wanda, from Beko, from MVP. So they were together. A lot of them also, some of them have invested in each other's companies. So there's also history.
Format. It's a creative idea.
So there's a history as well. There's transactions that happen on those people, and then
hopefully
it's
it didn't
really
evolve into a fist fight.
Well, there was some controversy. It was good in the setting, but it's good to actually create. A
little controversy.
A little controversy, a little like buzz about what's happening, and for people to speak out as well, on certain things that are important to other entrepreneurs or important to other VCs. So that's about the format, right? And now it comes to some speakers who bring, like when you bring a global speaker, it's important that they're relevant to the region, because getting some Silicon Valley whatever person who's just going to talk about Silicon Valley. It's not relevant to the region.
Exactly.
So that's why, for example, Dave McClure from 500 Startups, he's more relevant than others because he's had so many investments in the region and startups in the region. They know the region.
Didn't they start a subsidiary fund here?
Yeah, as well.
What's it called again?
Yeah.
Something.
It's still under 500 Star. They give them different names. I can't remember the name.
It's something Falcons or something.
Yeah, exactly. So they have like it's known as 500 Startups, but
Right.
then you have like the naming for each fund.
Exactly.
But people like that who have relevancy to the region are quite important as well. So different things, but it's a mix of the two, I would say.
Because from what I've seen as a student that is in a creative field, that is super interested in tech, STEP has actually increasingly began to really make a name for itself. And
Yeah.
it's something that we covet to go to.
Yeah.
So first of all, thank you for creating such a wonderful panel of speakers that are not only relevant, but they're also entertaining. Another question that I had was that these speakers come from various different backgrounds. It's not exclusively tech, but it's more like tech in your everyday life today. So it's encompassing whether it's the business aspect of it or the entertainment aspect of it. What was your insight behind that? Like, why did you decide to, as you said, this year to introduce
Music.
Music, exactly.
Yeah. It's a lot because of, like you said, right? There's everything is integrating with tech, right? So you've got, if you look at the transportation industry, right? You got Uber or mobility in general, like Uber is in. You look at hospitality, travel space. You got Airbnb who came and disrupted. You look at so many others. So then whether it's in media or transportation or and you have film as well, like you have Netflix, you have. So a lot of that is like industries are connecting in one way or the other, but tech is becoming like kind of like an accelerator for different industries rather than an industry by itself. So everything is integrating. Exactly, everything is integrating with tech. So that's where like music comes in, right? So you've got platforms like Anghami, like Apple Music, like even like the creation of the iPod in the first place and iTunes like changed the entire music scene, the space, how artists go about content creating music and doing things. So it all ties into each other, and our role is to bring in all industries and connect them with tech and connect them with each other as well.
So on that same topic, you've run now the STEP conference since 2012. What are some of the themes that have emerged for you as far as like digital media and technology in Dubai? What are some of the themes that you kind of fleshed out over
the main themes you mean like industries that are
in terms of verticals that are the ripest for innovation, and even in terms of like how the funding situation is working out, all that kind of stuff.
I think in terms of like the region itself, I think one of the best things that has worked, which is it's a reality, right, that we have to look at, is that there's been a lot of like copies of things that worked in the West, right? And then it's not necessarily a bad thing, it's actually a great thing. The challenge in that becomes localization.
Right.
So you look at Kareem and how Kareem were able to like be a local player, be localized and compete within the space, and they're essentially they're an Uber of the Middle East, right? Then you've got, for example, Anghami. Anghami is kind of like a Spotify for the region. They were able to really localize their model by doing a combination of advertising and subscription-based services. So a lot of it is about seeing what's worked abroad. Because usually I feel like the region is like 4 or 5 years behind, right? So whatever has worked 5 years ago, and
it's very interesting insight, and I think the localization piece is the most interesting part of that.
It is.
How do you differentiate from the thing that's successful already?
You can't just copy 100%. You have to. You take the core, which is usually it's more on people's behavior, kind of like change and technology improvement, which is more globally available rather than locally. But you take it and you localize. You find a way to make it work locally, to make it relevant locally, because people behave differently here than outside.
So on that note, let's talk about that. What makes the region unique? Like what are some of those characteristics?
Some of them are very positive, some of them are very negative, unfortunately. So you have to look at, but you have to see both, right? So on the positive side, we were talking before, this is a region of where 50% of the population are millennials, are people under the age of 30. That's by itself is massive, right? However, this as well can go in a very positive direction or very negative. When you have a lot of young people with tons of energy, it either can be, that energy can be fueled in a way in a right way, whether it's, you know, fostering the region, making it a better place, etc., or energy going in a wrong place. And this is where, you know, I would say like platforms come in, education comes in, technology comes in, but those consumers are like those, you know, young people in the region are and that's studies show that they're very adaptive of new tech, adaptive of
early
new
adopters.
trends. They're exactly. So what we need to do now is make them as well producers rather than just consumers, have them consume the right stuff. So they think in the right way. The early adopters, YouTube is the you know, Saudi is number one in the world in terms of like YouTube consumption.
Really?
Yeah, I think Saudi and US are the top two. That's by itself is massive. Snapchat, there's no study about it, but it's like you can tell just like
Ask any of my students.
yeah, exactly, and you can see that's like and Snapchat is for early adopters. Like it's a platform for, and that's the region, right? But now we need to come and see like what works, you know, best here, how as well like it's chicken and egg issue, but how you can create enough funds to kind of invest in enough amount of startups, but how can you have enough good startups so that the funds are created? So, but that's the ecosystem. It's you're gonna run in the chicken and egg problem, but we have to keep pushing for both. There needs to be people who are more aggressive or are more willing to take risk, and just write checks, like Fadi Andour, for example. So this is. We need more of
So what
that
are the leading VC firms then, in your opinion? Who's writing the most checks? Is it Wamda Capital? Or?
I mean, you have there are not many VCs, right? But you have Amda Capital, Beko Capital, MEVP. You have a lot of also like corporate investors as well, institutional investors that are there. I just found out yesterday that Aramco has a $200 million fund, right? There's a lot of those as well, you know, institutional VCs and there's investors and VCs. There's Leap Ventures. There's a good amount of capital available. How fast is another question.
How fast? You mean they go from hearing a pitch to investing? Is that what you mean?
How fast in terms of like risk taking and in terms of, you know, funds being available to those VCs, because VCs also need to go get money, right?
They have to raise it themselves.
They have to raise it themselves before they give it to someone else. So VCs traditionally go to, you know, like wealthy families, people who believed in real estate before and other things to put money in technology. But this is changing fast, and when you start seeing, speaking about real estate, what Mohammed Al-Habbar is doing now, you probably read the piece yesterday that he's starting a company that only employs people under age of 25. It's a millennial company, so if you're like above 25, like you cannot even apply.
Wow.
So that's they're building like an Amazon of the region as well. So that's an entry of someone who's very big businessman, real estate man, right, into tech, and very aggressively into tech in the right way.
It's also a very interesting kind of business experiment.
It is.
We'll have to wait 2-3 years to see how that works out.
The other thing it ties up to
apply for a job there.
Yeah,
definitely.
And yeah, so the other thing I was gonna say is that you have to, because I like live in Dubai, but I go often to Beirut because our other office is there, or go to Jordan or Cairo, other places. You start to see and compare like Dubai and other cities in the region, how they are. So to be able to create products, let's say, or apps or stuff that work, you need to have the consumer base for it.
Right.
Dubai, in a way or another, was able to create an early adopter with high purchasing power kind of space. So, like, to give you a more specific example, like when I'm here, you can you have an app, 5 apps to get food, you know, from Uber Eats to Deliveroo to like Zomato.
Right,
to
it's a kind of
Ramy's.
saturated vertical.
So many, right? And then you have you know, an app you know, to do your laundry. Then you have an app to get a cleaner. Then you have you know, have an app for everything, which is fantastic, which is amazing. And it shows you, like when I go to Beirut and then I feel that, you know, you only have Uber and Careem, but you don't have any of the other services
I see.
that are there, that are here, that are not present there. And then it's because the market there is not as ready as like you have payment regulation issues. You have then you start like finding where all the gaps are, and there's so many gaps. So you're gonna, it's again another chicken and egg problem, that you need, you know, payment, better regulation on payment gateways, on online payments in order to have platforms, and you need the consumers to have the platforms. So.
You have to, in other words, cultivate the ecosystem.
Yeah, it's an ecosystem. It's things that have to come up together at the same time.
Did you want to ask a question?
Yes, I wanted to ask. Okay, so you've talked about how there's like talent in the region that needs to flourish, and that STEP Conference is a platform for them to get their name out there, get venture capitalists, etc. However, a trend that I've been noticing personally, which was the fact that every single company now is doing the something of the Middle East. Have you been noticing a trend that breaks away from that stereotype? Perhaps people coming up with their own new creative ideas?
It's I've seen a few, like I can name a few, but in general, like those who do create something that's non-existent, let's say elsewhere. Like I give you an example of someone, like, you know, Hind, the startup called Instabeat, which is a wearable swimming goggle, right? And that didn't exist anywhere, so she came up with it, she invented, but she's now more, she has some team here, but she's more in San Francisco and in the US, because when you start something so early on, you need to be in a massive market like the US or elsewhere for it to actually grow. But the more successful models have been the whatever of the Middle East, because again, we are 4 or 5 years behind, and we cannot ignore that, because it's an ecosystem, it's an economy, it's consumers, it's all of that. So that's why, like, what has worked, you know, outside, you know, 5 years ago is very likely to work now, and it is proven in almost every single industry. Like, but we are a STEP as a company, and we're building the BuzzFeed of the Middle East. BuzzFeed started in 2006 in the US, and you know, now they are you know, the #1 new media company. If we had started in 2006 here as STEP and doing STEP Feed and Yalla Feed, we went way too early. Like, you'd go talk to media agencies or to brands. Like, native advertising was, we were still doing TV and print at the time in 2006. Like, display was something that was new. So like native advertising, which is what we do through our platforms, is just like starting like 2 years ago here. So timing is important. That's why, you know, many times following that model of, you know, what's worked outside, you do something here, but you localize it. You do it locally right. And locally right in terms of consumers, in terms of industry, in terms of commercially different things.
So, in your opinion, on that note, what are some of the most successful startups right now in Dubai and or the region that are successfully executing that strategy?
The localized part?
Or what do you think are some of the hottest startups right now?
I mean, definitely you have the big ones, which is you know, Souk is already now big enough to hopefully create the first IPO story in the region. Careem is definitely really big and going fast. We've got quite a lot of others. Like, you look at more like the property space, let's say like Property Finder or Dubizzle exited. You know, you look at the exits that happened. Talabat exited. You look in more like spaces like, for example, like media, like food, like Shahia. An example of someone who exited for the Cookpad. So I think what we're lacking is actually exits as well, a faster pace to investments and exits. We're really like very short on exits in the region. Then you have several other. You have Lemshi, you have you know, they have Luxury Closet.
Why are we short on exits in the region? What's causing that?
It's there's several factors. So one could be the availability of or interest in the region from global players, because sometimes like exits. So exits can either come globally, like a global, player in property, online property, whatever, comes and purchases. Like for example, how Naspers, who has like OLX, acquired Dubizzle, that's a global kind of like. So there needs to be a bigger increase in interest in the region, which is happening. So from global players, then you have more like bigger local groups who have interest in acquiring companies. So you think like retail, for example, right? So like very large retail groups in the region could acquire, an online platform like Nemshi, for example, or Luxury Closet or something else. So they are still way behind. So now, like again, go back to Amar and Al-Abbar, they have a massive retail, conglomerate. So they are moving very fast now into the e-commerce space. So it's several factors. It depends where it's coming from. In general, it needs to all move as well a lot faster. More investments, bigger investments.
And you anticipate it accelerating?
It will happen, yeah, for sure. Definitely it will increase.
So yeah, let's talk about your company, Step Group, which has two subsidiary new media companies, StepFeed and YallaFeed. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah. So we went into, like, after we started Step Conference, we went about a year and a half, 2 years ago, into the content play. And there's a massive gap in terms of content creation in the region, and social, shareable content for millennials in the region, to be more specific. And in a way that's done in a very modern, optimized, kind of like a new media way, just like BuzzFeed has done it, and Vox Media and Vice and Business Insider, others have done it in the West. So the region lacks that kind of player. That's when we started StepFeed and YallaFeed, and essentially what we do with that is we don't think of content just as verticals. We also think of content as where it's emotionally connecting with the audience, where it's relevant to the audience, moments that people have lived, nostalgia, Arab identity. That's how we think of content.
That's cool. So that's your localization piece.
That's a massive part of localization, right? And a lot of this could fall under food, fashion, sports, whatever. So usually more like even online, like platforms. Like think of content as sports, food, fashion, like very vertical based. We think more, kind of like relevancy, emotional connection basis, and then it ends up automatically going into, being fashion or being food or being something else.
And when did you start StepFeed and or YallaFeed? Were they started at the same time?
Around the same time, around the same time. So we've grown like quite fast. So we started went from 0 to 3 million unique users today, in a year and a half.
And you're looking at the analytics. I'm assuming you're looking at where they're coming from. Where are most of your readers?
So YallaFeed, the biggest readership is Saudi and Egypt. StepFeed is more UAE focused, and then Saudi as well. They actually have good, decent amount of English readers. Then you have rest of GCC and Levant, like Lebanon, Jordan, other countries. That's what StepFeed.
And how do you go about producing this content? So if you run a content platform, you're basically under endless pressure to create content.
Yes, so that's where a big part of it comes. So you have two challenges, right, with that piece. You have the creativity localization part, and then you have the process optimization efficiency part, right? So in terms of the process efficiency optimization part, what we've done is we've created something called a Hugo, which is our own backend system, is our own backend content management distribution system. So what Hugo does in many ways is it helps us centralize the distribution among hundreds of channels. Channels meaning being website or being Facebook page or being Twitter or being anything like that. So you have like hundreds of those channels. You can centralize that distribution, measure A/B tests, see where it's doing best, where it's not, which audience it works with, and then enable it to self-learn in terms of how it gets distributed. So that distribution part. Content creation, which is what you were asking about, it enables us to, through that system, where the editorial team is sitting in Beirut, they can easily engage, a student at AUD, for example, to write a content piece. And the way that's done is that there's kind of like a very automated process in terms of a student from AUD who wants to write a content piece with an editor who's sitting in Lebanon to remove all this emails back and forth and all that stuff. Everything is on the platform. It's automated. There's notification system. There's a hierarchy.
You have some kind of editing going on, though.
Yeah, so everything gets edited by the editors. But the way we've made it easier as well is that we have formats, right? So we have, for example, a list format, which is like top 10 things, for example.
Right.
You would know if you went to AUD, and then. The way you would do that is like any person can do, like really anyone can write a piece of content, because traditionally how it's been done on other platforms that you go in, like WordPress, for example, you go into WordPress, you get this empty like kind of space, like a Word document that you need to fill in and drag stuff in to create a post. What we've done is that we've created templates. So if it's a list,
and these are based on your algorithm.
So we've built all that, our own, like we've developed all this in-house, right?
But it's based on your analysis of what works. Like in other words, you choose the top 10, or you choose this or that.
Yeah, the formats. Those we call formats. So listicles obviously work really well, right? They're considered. So to take an example of the list, we've created a template. A student can come in and just, or any contributor anywhere, can just drag and drop into that, those blocks, instead of, having to like be so lost in terms of where they start, where they end. So essentially cutting down the time to produce content, creating a quiz online, like those online quizzes that you see, the interactive online quizzes. On WordPress, it takes an hour and a half. On our platform, it takes 15 minutes. So this is
cool.
So you see like the content creation kind of.
And how do you decide on how you're going to float a new? Do you pilot a new format and then see how it goes, and you like A/B test it?
Yeah, I mean, we have staff writers as well. So obviously, so it's not only like contributors who are writing. So we have editors, we have staff writers as well. So we if it's a new format, we would start with it as well. Like internally, we would produce a lot of content through that. We would see how it does. It's all obviously based on data, right? It's based on what does better, what gets consumed better. People have very short attention span. That's extremely important. So new media comes in a time where people's attention span is dropping, and it's not only their attention span, it's also they're becoming more picky, right? There's so many information, unless I'm super interested in something, I wouldn't want to spend 10 minutes reading it. I'm better off spending 10 minutes going through 20 pieces, in and out, getting different information.
I mean, that's how I consume media, right?
Yeah. Everyone. That's a long form content is consumed in things that an individual is extremely interested in, and that's usually one or two things, right? It's not everything. But and actually,
you really have to get away, and you have to be like lying in bed at night or something to be able to.
But like now, you're standing in line somewhere, and you can read 2-3 things right at the same time. Like
just
you get
flying through it.
It's information, right? And that's what people need in the region. They need information. They need perspective. They need to think better, to think differently. That's what people need, And by becoming what we want to become, which is the BuzzFeed of the Middle East or NBC of digital, we would be able to reach to hundreds of millions of young people in the region who are shaping the future of this region.
So you want to, in other words, shape the new media habits in the consumption in a kind of the digital consumption habits of the next generation.
Yeah. So that's both on a content level, on level where you use tech, you use data, you use optimized way of content creation and distribution to build that. But ultimately, we want to become the largest new media company in the region with multiple platforms, 100 distribution channels across the region, reaching 100 million unique users in 5 years and having about 1 billion views monthly across our platform. So that's going from 3 million today to 100 million in 5 years. So that's our goal.
What is that's amazing, and it's very ambitious, but it's also very clear.
Yeah.
And so the question is, what is your goal for funding? Are you targeting? You have certain.
Yeah, we fundraised last year a small amount. We're fundraising now as well. Soon we'll announce that. So we'll be closing our Series A soon. So that will be our Series A round. So we're a startup as well, essentially, right? So we're doing now Series A. We're going to do Series B probably and C.
Excellent. Well, we'll be following that in the news, and then also coming to get our students jobs.
Yeah, exactly.
So you talked about how you produce written content using formats, writers, and kind of algorithmically tested content, which is very interesting. And what is your approach to, let's say, rich media content, video content, and so on?
Yeah. So to start with, I think like written content has evolved a lot as well. So it's no more like purely written. It's content that's also very visual based. So quizzes are kind of like positioned as written, but they're super interactive. You have like lists, which is another format. Even like the way we tell stories is through using GIFs, using memes, using different social posts and social embeds within. So that's when it comes to the written part, which we've been mostly doing before. But over the next year, you're gonna start seeing a lot more from us in terms of like video content and content that lives on social and is made only for social. So content that doesn't go on our website, it just goes directly on our social channel. So we own a channel called Arab Vines, for example, and Arab Vines is essentially a Facebook page with an amazing organic reach of millions of people in the region. And what we post there is mostly like videos, just like pictures and memes and certain things. It's just like rich media, and it does so well, does fantastically well. We're launching video very soon, in the next week or so. We've been planning for that for a while, and we're gonna go very aggressive on video. So we're gonna become 50% video by end of next year, producing about 20 videos a day that go online.
And what is your logistical approach to that? You're going to have to hire video teams?
Yeah, we're building an
editing?
entire video team studio in-house, and obviously collaborate as well with universities like yours on involving students, involving people on campus to produce localized videos as well.
Excellent. Thank you
Good.
so much.
Thanks for having me.